Good evening, everybody. Hello, hello. Can everybody hear me in the back of the room? No? Can everybody hear my voice? Raise your hand in the back. Can you hear me, Phil? Can you hear me? Tabitha, can you hear me? Yes? All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Hopefully, I'll be able to project my voice out and doesn't blow the microphone out for the recording. So tonight, I appreciate everybody coming out. We got a really good crowd here in the hallowed grounds of Cinder Block Brewery, the Reclamation Room. The topic of the evening is a potential Royal Stadium development. If there's time after, I'm going to open up wide to any other questions you have about what's going on in town. My goal tonight is to get a shared set of facts so that we're all working from the same origination point when we start forming our opinions of what's happening in town. And then I'm here to listen. I'm here to hear your questions, your concerns, your support, your feedback, any of your thoughts. It's also going to be recorded, so we'll get into some ground rules to make sure everyone who's watching at home can also participate, also hear what's going on. Okay, we'll start with some facts. Number one, the city, and that is staff, council, and myself, are not begging the team to come to North Kansas City, despite what you may have heard in the press, despite what you may have heard from your neighbors. There is no begging happening. To date, I have had one lunch meeting with one representative from the Royals and a couple of phone calls. That's it. The rest of the talk has been internal or it's been at the state level. Number two, all sites, Kansas, KC-Mo, and North Kansas City are still in consideration. At this point, as of this afternoon, no sites are off the table. So we are one of the sites under consideration. We're not the site, we're not the only site, we're a site. Number three, Kansas has offered up to 70% funding using STAR bonds. These are bonds that they can put at the state level. They've offered up to 70%. The new piece since I last had an open forum and the last time I addressed the public is that the Missouri legislature has now passed some measures that would allow funding at the state level in the state of Missouri. The first one that already happened, that is the Clay County Sports Authority, which allows the county to redirect up to levy a new 1/2 cent sales tax per a public vote that would then go to a sporting facility. That is new from what I would call Royals 1.0 back in 2023, when we were trying to cobble together some parks taxes and some general taxes and trying to put together something. Now there's a dedicated sports authority in Clay County that could go to a sporting facility. Second piece of the funding mechanism is called Show Me Sports Bill. Is that right? Show Me Sports?
Close enough.
Close enough. All right. And what that will do is take a snapshot of the current revenue as of this past year for the team. They'll project that out 30 years, and they can bond against that. They can use a bond to fund the start of the project. The amount that would raise is unknown at this point. Due to non-disclosure agreements, whatever you've read in the press is just a best guess. The number getting thrown around is $300 million. We have no idea. We had a meeting with the state to discuss what's on the table. They said they can't talk about it because they're under a non-disclosure agreement. So that number could be, at this point, anything. Number three, those first two would fund the stadium. Those would fund the stadium only. The third piece is called the Downtown Revitalization Program. This would fund a district around the stadium, that bars, restaurants, offices, whatever else goes around it. And this is designed for revitalizing downtowns in smaller towns in Missouri. Since we're a small town in Missouri, despite our proximity to the metro, the major metro, we still qualify for this. And it would allow us to define a 1/2 square mile area and then redirect net new sales tax, so net new revenue coming in, up to 50% into funding that district, and that is as the revenue is realized. Am I missing any points on that so far?
State's up to 50.
State's up to 50.
City's at least 50.
Okay, so state is up to 50, city's at least 50. That's the district around. So these are the funding mechanisms. And county, sorry. We got some people from the county. I may as well go ahead and recognize folks in the room. So we've got a couple county commissioners here. We got Jason Withington and Scott Wagner. Any other county commissioners in the room? Raise your hand. All right. These are the good ones right here. Don't worry about that. Carpenter, I didn't say it. We got Mike.
That video when you're done, I'm gonna use
Yeah, well, this is going out wide. Don't worry about it. We got City Administrator Mike Nichols. We got Deputy City Admin Kim Nakahoto. Who else is in there? We got council members. Council members, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. We got at least 3 council members. Very good. Okay. Moving along. Fact number 5. There is no timeline at this point. The Royals have no timeline on making a decision. There are timelines getting thrown around. Star bonds in Kansas at this point expire at the end of June. I don't care. There are ballot timelines. If you want it on the November ballot, it's got to be decided by the end of August. I don't care. We're not going to get backed into a corner to make a decision. Okay? We're going to take our time with this. We're going to ask all the hard questions. We're going to get your feedback. Then we're going to make decisions. We're not going to get pushed into we have to have this at the end of July or end of August. There is no timeline on this at this point. Any proposal that comes through the city will need to include funds for things we need. Funds like infrastructure funding for things around the stadium, water, wastewater, stormwater infrastructure, and then the big one that we've all heard, something to do with streetcar light rail. All of that's going to be in a funding package if we're going to be considering this. Got nowhere to set my drink down, so let's... Fact number 7. We have negotiating teams formed at the city level. The city negotiating team is myself, Mayor Pro Tem Amy Clark, and Councilmember Connor Fitzgerald. And the county also has one that is Commissioner Wagner, and then his counterparts, John Carpenter and Jay Johnson. Correct. So three-headed monster from each, plus the city admin, county admin. We've only had one meeting as a group, and that didn't involve the team. We just talked funding with some state reps to see what's available. But good groups, good job working together so far. So thus far, we've had a lot of concerns expressed. Some citizens, I see some people here that have gone to the county commission meetings, have come to the city council meetings, started getting their comments on the record. I appreciate that. I welcome that. Bring that. If you want to come to council meetings and you feel comfortable doing that, it goes on the public record. It's part of the conversation. If you don't feel comfortable coming to those meetings, I understand. I'm often uncomfortable at those meetings. Come to one of these meetings and get your thoughts out. Okay, we're gonna listen. It doesn't matter where you say it or how it comes across. Speak out at one of these as well. Okay, ground rules for this discussion. Number 1, we're going to assume best intentions. There's a lot of big thoughts, big opinions about what's going on here, but everybody in this room is here because they care about this city, okay? If somebody speaks out and you disagree with them, just listen to what they're saying, try to understand where they're coming from. They might have a very valid point that you haven't considered, okay? So don't start pushing back on people, don't start arguing, just come in, listen, and speak what you have to say as well. Speak honestly when you talk, and when you do speak, please raise your hand. I'll call on you and speak into the microphone. So Kim's in the back. She's got a microphone clipped to a blue ruler, because that's how we roll. It will not amplify your voice, so speak loudly, but speak into the mic so that it picks up on the recording. And then the final one, please don't monopolize the conversation. We have a lot of people in this room, a lot of thoughts in this room. Some of you may have a lot to say. Get it out there, but if one person is starting to kind of run the conversation, I'm going to politely move along to the next, okay? I'm not trying to cut anybody off. I just want everyone to have a chance, who wants to say what they want to say, okay? With that, let's talk. Who wants to break the ice? Who's got the first thought, question, comment, support, or concern? Right over here.
My big concern, one of the things that we're a lot of is transportation infrastructure, in addition to the streetcar, highway access, MoDOT, and I'm sure MoDOT's going to engage at some point, if they're in a position to share any ideas of how that much traffic is going to get in and out of the county.
Okay, thank you. First question on the table is about traffic. That's what I hope to have basically as the first question. My number 1 concern right now, traffic. We don't have a clear picture. But before we make any decisions, we're going to get a much clearer picture. MoDOT has talked about widening I-35 right over in this vicinity and possibly adding access roads, finding ways to urge people to not take Armor Road as their exit into the game. Traffic, as we know, flows like water. We'll find the path of least resistance. So I'm curious to hear from professional traffic engineers, people who understand this much better than I do, what their plans are. But this is the number one thing that I'm going to be pushing on to make sure that the folks of us living here who are impacted differently than other parts of the county are not gridlocked 81 days a year. So that's not an answer we're going to have yet. Even the renderings that came out in the first go round, where we saw the fireworks going off and the guy paddle boarding in the retention pond, those aren't necessarily going to be what we go with this time either. So it's all on the table. Next question. Yeah, back here. Yep.
Will the location still be the same, or will it be further south?
Say that one more time.
Will the location still be the same, or will it be further south?
Yeah, location is.
So close to the neighborhood.
Yeah, the location is roughly the same as I understand it, but we do have 90 to 100 acres of area, and I have not seen any updated renderings from the last go round. I understand they're working on those though.
What sort of play or influence does the actual landowner have in this whole process? And can that, yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, so the landowner, the Merriman Group, AdCap Financial as well, they have some sway. They are interested in doing this. I've sat down with managers from that group, and they seem to understand kind of what makes North Kansas City special. We've talked about the small town feel. We've talked about and even shared some specific stories about what they've seen that makes NorthTown so great. And so I think rather than what we saw the first time around, I think there's going to be a much more measured approach from their side. We talked about impact to businesses. So how do we get people who would come to the games to also patronize the businesses that exist here? How are they going to do that? We talked strategies, how parking might lay out so people have to walk through the neighborhood, or not in the neighborhoods, through the business areas so that they see other parts. As far as their influence, they have money that they can put toward the project. They have lobbyists who can work with lawmakers. That's been going on to get some of these bills funded, but they can't force anything through. That's something that's going to be a partnership. So it's going to take city, county, state, team, and landowner to all be involved. Kim's getting her steps in tonight.
There's supposedly a mystery poll that's been released that says Clay County voters are citizens are in favor of the stadium.
Sure.
Is that correct?
There was a text poll that went out about an hour after I was elected, after running on this being a non-issue. I started getting screenshots, and the data that I've been told is that it was favorable. I don't know how favorable or if that's accurate.
Do you know, did those questions also involve how likely are you to vote for it? Clay County voters are notorious for
So,
not raising.
yeah, how likely are you to actually show up and make the vote? I didn't get the poll myself. Jason's nodding that it was asked how likely they would vote. I don't know how nuanced the poll got, but the results, I'm told, were favorable across Clay County.
For as long as I've been alive, the Jackson County Sports Authority is one of the most powerful lines in Jackson County.
Sure.
Full of unelected people. What is Clay County to make sure that we don't create the same problems?
Sure.
10, 20, 30 years down the line, in Jackson County.
Good question. Yeah, this guy, take it. Hold on, let's grab the mic. Come join me on the camera shot.
Yes. I've had a lot of mics in my time, but never one that looked like this. So, yeah, very fancy. Thanks for your question. I went down there to Jefferson City to talk about that with our legislators and along with Jerry Nolte. So, I'll answer it this way. The structure of any sports authority, whether it's Jackson or Clay County, runs basically through the governor's office. So the way that structure works is if and when a sports authority has to be created, then it will be up to the commission to put forward names to the governor. Governor will select those individuals just as they do in Jackson County. So your question is somewhat driven in two parts. Our role is to find individuals to send to the governor to say these are good people that we think should represent you, Mr. Governor, on this board. Then it's up to him and then the Senate, who will then go through their process to select. But I might take the opportunity too to explain what they can do and what they can't do. And I might disagree with one statement that you made. Sure. So look at your sports authority, whether it's Jackson, Clay, whatever, as a landlord, because that is basically what they are. They are a landlord that looks over, manages, and works with the teams that are there. They are the ones that give them, here is your lease. And if they sign it, then they manage that lease. In this particular case, the only difference between them and a regular landlord is that a sports authority can then also put out bonds. So what does that mean? What that means is if, for the sake of argument, let's say they choose Clay County. Let's, for the sake of argument, say that if something goes in front of voters and they agree that yes, we would like them to be there, then the bonds then that are put out then allows for something to be constructed, travel through a sports authority. What they don't do is they don't tax you. They don't tell the teams what to do. They are a landlord with some extra powers. But those that are on it first are selected by commission. Governor says, okay, out of these 7 or 9 folks you've given me, I'm going to suggest these 5. And then the Senate has to say, we agree, Governor, with whom you selected. Is that
To be that, yeah, like, just my policy, it has to be that way.
so? When yes, because that's what the state law says. But just to kind of pull back for a moment, I would tell you that whether you're the Chiefs or the Royals, you've had 60 years of dealing with the same kind of structure. A sports authority created that goes through the governor. When they were looking at other sites, they basically said to Clay County, well, you don't have what Jackson County has. Okay, now does that mean you won't come because of that? Don't know. But the response was basically, okay, we don't have what Jackson County has. I guess we better go get what Jackson County has to remain in this conversation. Now, having said that, Johnson County does not have an equivalent to that. I don't know if it will matter at the end in all of this. But the law that was passed through the state mirrors the structure that was in Jackson County. That sports authorities lasted for 60 years. So I can't tell you if it's better or worse than that structure. What I can tell you is it is a similar structure because that's what the teams were used to, if that helps.
Okay, cool, appreciate it. All right, yeah, important clarification.
So going back to the poll question, my understanding is there's a lot of mystery surrounding the poll in terms of who put it out, who paid for it, what it actually truly says. So does anyone in this room from the county or city actually have the poll and know that information?
You know, we put that out. Go ahead.
So they gave us a private results, so we're not allowed to talk about it, but it was a county-wide poll, and it was 60-40 basically on the results county-wide, but I think it was the team that paid for it. But we don't have a physical copy of the poll. They gave us a brief rundown of the polling and, breakdown. It was Clay County-wide, North Kansas City. Then they did Shoal Creek up by Staley, North Kansas City, or Blackstone area, and then they did Liberty, Excelsior, Smithville, and Carmel. But we don't have a physical copy of it. It was proprietary, so they wanted it back. But it was 60-40.
Do you have the results of just North Kansas City?
So, no, we don't have, they
Yeah, I mean, you don't
do,
have any,
but when they gave us a breakdown, it was pretty much 60-40 in every zip code that they did a polling on. So it was, that's all I can tell you.
Thanks.
And I've not seen the breakdown or the specific results. Go ahead, pick.
So my main concern is if the stadium were not to happen, is what would happen with the land, knowing that this single ownership group owns so much. And we've had that in the past with companies who will not be spoken of anymore.
Those who shall not be
So I
named.
have a couple questions. Has there been any indication of what they would do with the land if it's staying that you got? And is there any mechanism in the city government city planning wise to have some control over what businesses come in and what the land is used for?
Sure. So I'll point back to Royals 1.0. That question did come up. So what happens if we're not the chosen site? The answer was not particularly satisfying at the time. This was also 2 years ago, but it was a slower build out. It's just, if you see a stadium come in, it's going to be built out as quickly as humanly possible, along with the things that are planned around it. Otherwise, it's going to be more of a 10, 20-year build out, one thing at a time, parcel by parcel. They talked about more housing, stuff like apartments or different types of commercial on the ground level, retail above, those sorts of things. More of an organic growth rather than kind of an explosion of growth. The city does have tools in its arsenal to not to dictate what happens, but if they apply for a rezoning for an industrial lot that would want to become commercial or residential, that would come through the planning commission and then to the city council. To deny a request like that, we would have to have a really good reason. We're not really in the business of denying those sorts of requests unless there's some really negative externalities for it. But it would be a much slower build out process. It wouldn't be this kind of overnight, immediate growth. And there'd be some frustration with that as well, because things are going to be turning over. Construction is never fun, having equipment and roads shut down and all of that. But it would be sort of what you'd see as cities, kind of like what you're seeing over in Riverside, where they're getting built out bit by bit, drip by drip. But that's what we understood. Yep.
Quick follow-up. So it's also fair to assume that in that case, we wouldn't have the benefit of the additional funding to fill out the infrastructure that will be necessary inevitably if there are a bunch of new apartment complexes.
Correct. That would be part of we have to plan for that. So, like I say, if we're going to do this with a stadium, there's going to be state money that needs to come in and quickly fix that. If it's not a stadium and it's a slower build out, we're going to have to plan for, probably do some master planning for how we recapture some of those tax revenues and use them for sewer infrastructure. We might have to take on debt, which I know is a 4-letter word. We might have to take on debt to put that together. We will have to upgrade our aging infrastructure. We've been doing planning, so we've done a stormwater, a wastewater, and a water delivery master plan, which should be coming out soon. So we've gotten ahead of that, but all we really know is our pipes are super old. As we saw with the one that exploded in the park last year, was almost 100 or over 100 years old with the date stamp on it. So it will need to get upgraded, and that will be a cost that we will bear as a city, more so if it's a slower build out.
We all know industry is very important to the economy in North Kansas City. And I'm just curious, what is the general feeling in the industrial district of the spur, the Edmonton.
Yeah, so if you didn't hear, what's the general feel across the business and industrial community? It's mixed, similar to what you've got here with residents. Some are excited, some see their property values going up, some see possibly increased revenue with new foot traffic. Some say this could wreck our way of doing business because we rely on truck routes and efficiently moving things through town. So similar to residents, everyone has a nuanced view, and so I can't paint with a broad brush. I've talked with business owners on both sides of this that say, please, it will cripple our business, we'll have to move, we've been here for a long time. And others that say, this would be amazing, we would love to see it, and it runs the full gamut in between. I've gotten, and not, this isn't an industrial piece, but I got a letter from Adam Roberts at Screenland that said, I don't know what this would do to my business. I don't know what it would do to the theater, because first pitch happens to coincide with most of their premiere movie times, right? So like when they bring in a big blockbuster movie, they contractually have to play it at a certain time, and often that is at first pitch. And so if there are other alternatives, why would somebody sit in traffic to come to Screenland when they could go to name your other cinema? And so these are the kind of things we really have to consider. This stuff that like wouldn't have been on my radar had I not been talking and asking people, what does this really look like? Other questions?
Okay, we already have in place, proposed in place to minimize the risk of residential areas being turned into short-term rental nightmares for those of us who like residential areas.
You said short-term rental nightmares? Yeah, so we already have a prohibition on short-term rentals in single-family residences unless it's your primary residence. So if somebody lives there and they want to rent it out for a big series, they could go on vacation and rent their home out for that series. But if you want to use your property in North Kansas City as a short-term rental, it has to be your primary residence. You have to go through a business licensing process, an inspection process, and you have to register with the city. So it would be pretty limited as far as I could envision it.
So how does the enforcement of that get funded? Because, you know, people don't always follow.
Yeah, we're watching that pretty closely. Our codes enforcement and our community development group is watching listings across the city. If they're under 30 days, they're getting letters. If they're not registered, they're getting shut down. So that's not something that's gonna hopefully be a problem as long as we're staying on top of it. Other questions? You don't have to ask a question either. I'm interested in hearing your unfiltered thoughts on this too. If you love the idea, raise your hand and tell us. If you hate the idea, raise your hand and voice that. Let's hear what we got to say about this.
Well, I speak about it. Retired teacher. And, you know, I mean, I don't know if you're gonna get people to say yes or no, at this point, we just don't have enough information.
Sure.
I mean, you know, depending on, I mean, I know what my student said, but until I know what's gonna happen, personally, obviously, no, I'm not gonna break right now.
Sure.
So I don't know if we can have that conversation yet.
Sure. Very fair take.
Here we go. Here we go.
Let's go.
Okay. One is, plan redevelopment in something. At some point, well, do I think the world is the best thing? Probably not. Do I think it's the worst? Absolutely not. I think there are many worse things. In my mind, lot more apartment would be far worse than having stadium. Although I would love the Chiefs over the stadium, the Chiefs depend on over the stadium as well, much less the traffic. But aside from that, I also want to throw out
in case anybody doesn't know, this is Tabitha. She was on the city council as of April. I guess she rolled off. Yeah, well, whatever. She was around for Royals 1.0, sat in the room, sat in those executive sessions where we were coming in at 6, 7 in the morning and staying and talking at 6, 7 at night, working with consultants. We really did get kind of pushed into a corner on timing and how that was going to go, and that's why I say, like, that's not going to happen this time. We're going to take the process, we're going to ask the questions, we're going to have more of these discussions as more information comes out, because you're right, we don't have the answers we need right now to make informed decisions, and until we do, there's not much to make of it. So I'm hoping to kind of just get the temperature of folks, like where you're leaning, if at all, and I do appreciate that you're saying, we don't know yet. Some people do know. Some people know right now that they will never be in favor of a stadium, and I respect that. Some people know right now that they want this stadium come hell or high water, and I respect that too. So I appreciate, you kind of stole my conclusion there. Our staff and our governing body are top tier. They're putting out the numbers, they're putting out the projections. We're working hard to get ahead of the asks right now so that when that does eventually come, or if that does eventually come, we have our numbers in front of us. We know what we're looking for. We know what we need. So, thank you.
Just a question on timing. I understand it's supposed to be a vote sometime in Lake County, and financial aspects like sales tax, and infrastructure bonds, and all that. Is that all going to come out and be in front of everybody on the vote?
So there's no specific timing on that right now. If we want to get it on a ballot, or if the county decides to get it on a ballot, there are deadlines that would have to be met. I believe for the November ballot, it's August, late August, end of August. So you're going to have a lot of lead time to find out what's on the table, what's being proposed. But at this point, there is no specific plan, because the team hasn't told us that we're the site that they're actually looking to move to. So that would need to kick the process, and then we can start talking about what the funding looks like, whether the county's going to put on a half cent or propose a half cent through a sports authority. Right now, there's no time frame for that, and I'm hoping none of that will proceed until we've had questions answered.
You want us to speak to that?
Sure. Come on.
Just because I like to see kids run around with that.
Yeah. We're making it work.
So that's the $300 million question right there, right? So just so you know, this is my second go around of this. And I can tell you that there were mistakes made by the Royals. They understand what they are. One of them is they waited not to the 9th hour, but I think to the 11:30 hour to come talk to you. And that was because they spent so much time trying to figure out the tax portion of it, they didn't do the rest of it. So as the mayor said, I'm part of that negotiating team now. We have seen various term sheets over time from the Royals, and I will tell you this, and I think if I say anything wrong, correct me, but there will not be a tax put in front of the people of Clay County until we know, one, what is the benefit for the entire county to do so, and two, what is the benefit for North Kansas City if we do, right? And if I might take a couple of other things that were pointed out. So for example, as it was pointed out, there was some artist renderings that you've probably seen. Part of that gets to some of that traffic issue. So for example, what do you do on Armour? What do you do on 16th Street? As far as the infrastructure, and I was just talking to Mike a moment ago about some of the old piping, the old sewer lines, stormwater lines that are here. Well, how does that get corrected? And does the state come in to help do that? Does as part of the whole building process, does that change? So we've talked quite a lot, and stop me, just right behind me. You can cook on me anytime.
I'm letting you cook.
Oh, you letting me cook? All right, I'm gonna cook.
Let's go.
Hopefully you like what I'm cooking. But at any rate, so imagine you've got a $1.2 billion project that someone wants to put down here. And as was mentioned, the state of Kansas has basically said, we'll cover 70% of that. So an important thing to know, this is where the tax comes in, so I'm going to get around to this. So that's the financing plan in Kansas. You kind of know what you're getting, 70% from the state, the team's gonna take care of the rest. What does that mean in Missouri? In Missouri, it is a state, county, city, team effort. So 4 pieces go into that. The interesting part for us, and I say us, city and county, is, well, what are each of our pieces? As I think was mentioned related to the mystery poll, what they've thrown out there is a half cent. I'll remind you, for those who covered this a year and a half ago, when they were talking about a full cent. And then it was a little bit low. We don't know yet. We can suspect, but we don't know until they actually say, here's the deal we want. And at that point, then the county is gonna say, well, okay, you want everyone in the county to pay this piece of it. What does everyone in the county get for doing so? That is the question that we will arrive at. But as I've mentioned to the mayor before, what does North Kansas City have to have in order for this deal to work for North Kansas City? And so kind of getting to the answer to your question, could be a tax that's out there. And just so everybody knows, there is current taxing authority in Clay County, a half cent for capital improvements, a half cent for parks. If we come to you as voters, I don't know which one we'll put before you or for how much, but that's the current taxing authority that we have. But in order to do that, we have to know what's in it for the county, what's in it for the city. Because if we don't know the answer to either of those questions, we don't put it in front of them. And if that is the case, like as the mayor said, he's absolutely right. If we were to come to you in November, we would have to have those answers by the end of August. If we don't have those answers, then we may say, we're not gonna put it on a November ballot, maybe April. And if we say that, maybe we lose it because of it. But I think if you observed what happened in Jackson County, the fact that they didn't have answers to these questions that you are asking meant it fell flat on its back. And to get to your question, if you don't mind, still cooking. To your question, the Royals are putting out those questions to everybody here because they and the Chiefs spent $5 million only to lose badly. So, if the county has to be a part of this financial picture, then the Royals are going to ask themselves a $5 million question of, can this even win in Clinton County? Because if it can't, then I'm pretty sure we're out. So, take all that and roll that up and know that there's a lot of things we know, there's a lot of things we don't know, but the one thing I think we know is that for it to come to Clay County, something's gonna have to go in front of you. And for the Royals to say, we would like to consider Clay County, we would like to go to Clay County, then you must have some confidence that that piece of it can happen. Otherwise, they've got 70% of the cost covered in Kansas. That's probably more than you ever wanted to know, but that's the reality that we're looking at. Awesome, yeah, appreciate it. Yeah.
So quick question for you. Well, you don't get to do all that talking and not have.
No, I'm not, that's fine, fair enough.
So part of the issue in Jackson County, obviously, was that there were a lot of issues with a fairly dysfunctional county system.
Correct, yeah.
Let's be honest, Clay County doesn't have a reputation of being a whole lot better than.
I like the way you're thinking, or maybe not. He didn't go where I thought he was going to go. Fair enough.
So my question is, are you all on the same page, or are we dealing with the same kind of dysfunction now Jackson County was dealing with at the time?
Sure.
Was that enough of a softball?
That's enough of a softball. I'll even call that a meatball, maybe. How about that? So my running joke is, if you grade on the curve, we're doing great. No, but I think there's a certain level of dysfunction in Jackson County that you won't see in Clay. Having said that, we are also not in the, and I think I can speak to this, you'll correct me. If it's a good deal for the county, then your county commission should be able to tell you, we believe it's a good deal. We should be able to tell you this is why we think you should support a deal. Now, I will not say that you should expect all 7 members of the county commission to jump up and down and bring out pom-poms and tell you, oh my gosh, or show up at your door. But at the end of the day, I think one of the mistakes that Jackson County also made is that you were so focused on the dysfunction and you were so focused on basically disagreement wherever you looked that those folks who really wanted it they couldn't break through. So I can't tell you that my expectation would not be that everybody's going to run to your door and say this is great. What I do expect is that if we think it's a good deal, that we should be able to tell you that we think it's a good deal. And I think that's the best way I can answer this. If you want to, yeah.
So historically, Clay County has been pretty bad. As the guy who led the audit, I was the chief petitioner for the state audit of Clay County because it was very corrupt, very bad, good old boy system. I was sick and tired of that. I then started the conversation on moving this county to a charter form or a constitutional form of government because after over 200 years, our county government had never evolved. So I saw a need, and so I worked along with a team of other people to start cleaning this up. And I wouldn't have ran for the county commission if I thought it was still, corrupt and everything, So I can assure you that we're doing a lot better. We still have a long way to go after, decades of corruption. It takes a long time to change the culture and everything. But I think Scott will attest, our county commission, we may have some internal arguments and stuff, but for the most part, we get along pretty well. Scott was my city councilman. I used to give him crap all the time. I probably wasn't his favorite but Scott.
I'm not saying anything.
But now Scott and I have a pretty good working relationship as commissioners. So, but one of the problems that you saw in Jackson County was they had too many unanswered questions even after the legislature posted or voted to put it on the ballot. I can tell you, every single person in this room, I will not support this deal with the Royals if it were to come for a vote, if we don't have everything answered. Like, we're not gonna be like Jackson County changing things the day before the election. And, I heard who asked the question about maybe it was you, about the sports authority and who would be on it. One of the things that I've been pushing for in this county is we have the same small group of people that serve on every board and every commission, and not a damn thing ever changes. And I get sick and tired of that. So if we have not had any discussions about a makeup of the sports commission or anything, because until the Royals make a decision, we have no reason to do this. So I would encourage anybody in this room, if we ever get to that point, to apply to be on that board. Problem is, we'll have all kinds of open seats, but no one ever applied except the same group of 5 or 6 people. So if we ever get to that, I would encourage anybody in this room to apply to be on a member of that board. But again, I just want to guarantee everybody that I will not support the Royals coming. If we cannot answer every question, we're not going to be going and changing things the day before the election like Jackson County.
And to add just a touch of flavor on that one, after I got elected, I tried to meet with as many of the commissioners as would have me, and I've met with a handful of them. I found them left, right, and center to be excellent human beings, people who are willing to listen, willing to look at nuance, willing to ask the questions, willing to come to North Kansas City from wherever the hell they live in the county and hang out with us, spend their money here. And they're just good people. Like they want to have questions answered. They want to be looking out for the people in this county. So I have a lot of confidence in the folks sitting over there and the rest of the group look forward to meeting the rest of them. We'll hopefully have that happen, so appreciate the question. Saw a couple more hands. Yep.
Here's my concern about sales tax goes or just in general. My concern is that what might be good for the county could also be not good for North Kansas City.
Yep.
So I could easily see the county overwhelming support for this, because who wouldn't want the ballpark to be nice and close, and we'll just run down to NorthTown and go to a game, and that's gonna be awesome. But then those of us that live here are actually dealing with the, day to day,
Yeah.
all of that.
Yes.
So that concerns me a lot, I guess. I don't really know the answer.
No, you're good. The way I conceived it is I call this the blast radius, right? So if you drop a stadium at where the bowling alley site was and draw some circles, like we're in the blast radius. Like we're going to be, as residents of North Kansas City and business owners of North Kansas City, disparately impacted from the rest of the county. We have different constituencies. My constituency is the people that live in North Kansas City, the people who have chosen to do business in North Kansas City. At the county level, they, for no malice, but they have a different constituency. They have the whole county that they're looking out for. And I do believe that they're going to ask the hard questions for North Kansas City. They're going to work in tandem with our negotiating team. But it's true. And you'll see there's a video that came out from the various chambers and the ADCs and the Economic Development Councils imploring the team to come to North Kansas City. And I kind of had a chuckle when I saw it, because no one talked to us at all before they said, come to North Kansas City. And so while I appreciate that each group is doing the best for their own constituents, this is our constituency, this group, this city, and we're gonna be looking out for that.
The sales tax, simple majority or 2/3, 3/4?
Simple majority, yeah. 50.001%.
I understand Mr. Sherman is a very strong anti-majority support. Do you have any feedback on that?
I don't know, I literally haven't met Mr. Sherman. I've met a Mr. Sherman, Mr. Brooks Sherman, but not Mr. John Sherman. So I don't know where John stands. I believe he's, through the press, that he's a Kansas City, Missouri fan, but I don't know.
And my first question, what are the general boundaries around Maryland's home?
Oh, I can show you a picture of a map that they have at their spot in the Oxbow. It's about 100 acres in NorthTown, generally from Armour Road. They own some of the businesses there. They got the Goodyear building, and then it extends to about 16, which is their domain. And then AdCap Financial owns the rest down to the river. And so that's potentially under joint control as well. So there's a large chunk of town that is under potential redevelopment or control. Yep, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I think we spend or we hear a lot of the negative consequences of having a stadium here. I'm wondering if you can share some of your own thoughts on what the positive aspects would be. Talk about how much you're going to end up paying in taxes, how much revenue you're going to get from it.
Sure.
What are you hearing from businesses who maybe are in this different, I can see some blocks and quite a bit.
Say that last part one more time.
I can see Zipper Block, for example, that is quite a bit.
Sure.
And I was gonna say, like, as of now, I kind of lean toward it because of the question mark of what happens if it doesn't go up. To me, it's like, are we gonna have 81 days a year of traffic, or are we gonna have 365 because now there's a bunch of people parking around? So, yeah, I think just kind of address what you see as the
Yeah, so the benefits, and at least this is me speaking as an individual, the benefits to me, I'm a big baseball fan. I think it would be pretty neat to be able to walk from pretty much any residence in North Kansas City to a game and take in not only the game, but all the buzz around it, the tailgating. I think it could be a lot of fun if that were to happen. Now, my perspective on that is different than somebody who doesn't care for baseball as much. I think there's a lot of opportunity to get what I would call that bite at the apple for the infrastructure dollars, because as we alluded to earlier, if not for this project and the dollars that could come tied to it, we're gonna have to find a way to fund the wastewater, sewer, all the less sexy stuff that we do need to fix infrastructure wise. And then things like streetcar, right? So the streetcar authority has intentionally not tied themselves to this deal. I would like to see it run up through NorthTown regardless of what happens. But it will get paid for a different way. So it'll be a lot more small businesses drawn into a transportation district that will then be funding, similar to what happened in Midtown. Does it become a streetcar or a light rail? There's a whole lot of nuance to that, but if the stadium comes, there will be more opportunity for dollars for something like that. The business impact is hard to quantify. I've gone down the rabbit hole of looking at other towns where stadiums have been dropped into a spot, and what was the impact to the businesses? Was it a net positive? Some say yes, some say no. The way stadium developments are designed now is to bring people into that development and keep them there. So would it be a net benefit to cinder block? I don't know. I hope so. And that's part of the discussion I have with the developer, the landowner, to say, how do we ensure that cinder block and chicken and pickle and some of the other legacy businesses, you know, Screenland Armor, Chapels, like how are they gonna get some support from people who are coming in for a game? And right now, that model, the one that you see in Atlanta, the one that you see in Minneapolis, it doesn't filter out as well to the surrounding businesses as I would like to see here. So these are the kind of things that, like we need to figure out, like how do we bring people through? But there is a potential rising tide lifts the boats. There's dollars for infrastructure, there's dollars for streetcar, but does that outweigh the costs, the potential risks? And it's gonna be a delicate balancing act. Yep.
This might be two questions, but I understand correctly, it sounds like we may have a vote on sales tax before we have any idea of what we want now. Is that correct?
That would be unlikely. It would be unlikely, according to Commissioner Wagner, that something would land on a ballot without more clarity. So it's going to be up to the commission whether that lands on the ballot. Who determines whether the sales tax goes to the ballot?
Commission.
Yeah, okay, so it'd be up to the county commission.
It won't happen until we have everything 100%.
So, yeah, we would need,
So that's the second part. Is there any kind of deadline from the oil about when they will decide?
so I asked that very question this afternoon via text, and there's not. There's no deadline. The best I get is they're hopeful that by end of summer, they'll have some clarity. So that's, do with that what you will.
I don't really have a question, I have more of a statement.
Okay.
I've heard that a lot of people's businesses will, they're interested in development, which is gonna be up to raise their hand. How many people in this board actually is level? I didn't see the poll.
Did anybody in the room get the poll? One? Two, okay.
So I'm talking about I guess the one that we don't really have seen the results for, so I served and not received that poll. I am not in favor of the stadium, I'll just say that outright. Doesn't mean that I didn't have my mind change as I get more information, but like my initial reaction at having a stadium 4 blocks from my house is no thank you. Or for some people, 2 blocks. So I guess it's more of a statement. I guess I would like to say, I would like for there to be more holding the bid work at the city. I don't know if that's something that the council could put together and actually hold our actual residents and who actually wants this here. And if we don't want this here, I mean, what actions can we take? If people really want this here, okay, well then that's great, so I guess we just have to put it out. But I think it's a very, there might be people who are in the fundamental ground, but my initial reaction, at least for myself right now, is without more information, I am 100% so.
So
thank you for telling us that. I think that is something we could look to do. We've done citywide surveys, we've done polls before that touched as many respondents as we can get. We work through a company called ETC to do a resident survey every few years. Without more information, sort of what Stacy alluded to is like, it's hard to say, hard to form an informed decision. And sure, right now you may be a hard no, some others might be a hard yes. And I don't know what we could do with that information at this point. So these sort of meetings, while not necessarily a representative sample, are a good first step, because we're very early still, to get the temperature, to find out who's leaning hard away, who's leaning hard into it, and then what questions do we need to get answers from so that people can make the informed decision. So I do think that's something we can look into doing as we get further down the road.
So I think I'm a little confused about how many people would be coming to royalty versus how many people would be living in an apartment complex.
Okay.
If they go to an apartment complex, and I don't live that far away from where I live, and I'm worried about parking on the street, trying to get to work, at night, the fireworks, how many people are just gonna be walking around in the neighborhood, like, what's the impact on the people living in the neighborhoods? And what's the benefit for the actual residents? I can see how there could be some benefits for the businesses. But what are the benefits besides, A, I can walk to a game, I know that I can afford to go very often, and I can see the stadium.
Sure.
But what are the actual, like, benefits that are gonna be for residents of the city, that make it great to still live here? Also, if there's a million people from the city block, I'm not.
Sure.
So, like,
Sure.
how many nice things I can turn on, and I'm not gonna do businesses here. So that's a key problem.
Yep, and those are valid questions. How do we quantify and what do those benefits look like? Some of the things that we looked at, and this is going back to Royals 1.0, is money into the city from revenue off of the district and from the stadium to do the things we need to do, keep our infrastructure up. That benefits the residents. And then having more potentially interesting things in town, more options for restaurants or things to do, family opportunities. I don't know if you've looked at what ballpark developments look like these days, but there are some with green space that you can take kids to and let them run around. So there's possibilities there, but it's a very valid question. How do we quantify benefits to the residents, not just for people wanting to come and visit North Kansas City? Yep.
This is all really good stuff. A couple of things, polling, and guys got to get off this polling stuff. It's so highly manipulated. And somebody mentioned that unless North Kansas City has the biggest chunk of that poll, it's meetings. And I've told many of my government officials, I'm sorry, I don't share your faith in government, really. But I've told the county commission and several other people, it's real easy to advocate for something that you don't have to do. So I think it's great that Liberty, Excelsior Springs, they're all gonna vote. I don't really care what they think. Just stick this thing in my backyard, and say it's me. All of you. The other thing is Jackson County did make a lot of mistakes. I've done some research on that. One of the biggest mistakes Jackson County made was they highly exaggerated economic benefit. So when you guys start hearing all this, well, it's gonna be this, or it's gonna be that, boy, you better take that with a grain of salt, because there's not a situation that anybody can find out there where they actually got the prediction correct. There's always a shortfall. And I wanna know, one of the things you guys swear you're gonna tell us, when there's a shortfall, and there will be a shortfall, where does that money come from to make up the shortfall? Because that's what they're gonna get us. The tax will be right in front of your face. It's the shortfalls is where they're gonna get you. Right? So let's make sure we understand that. And then the third thing is, for us here in North Kansas City, it's not all about the money, folks. It's about crime, it's about traffic, it's about money. We're gonna turn these streets over and avenues into more of a racetrack than they already are. So we've got to be thinking about those things, and I'm hoping, Jesse, that you and your team will be right in there pitching with the county, Don't just leave it up to the county to decide for this. Be like you, so you represent us, so make sure that all the voices are heard.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and we're in it. The first time around, when we looked at the numbers that were brought to, for us to consider for the potential stadium development, per square foot, the stadium would have performed on projection better than the best performing retail in Manhattan. And so it is often exaggerated when these things come forward. And so we are taking it with a grain of salt. We're looking at what is realistic, right? Like we can see the projections. And then what does it look like for us to staff a district? We got to provide services for that district. We have police, fire, we got to have first responders. And there's a number of different ways you can structure it. You can put it together in a CID. We could use North Kansas City PD, but they'll need more resources. North Kansas City Fire would need more resources. And so we're looking at all those things. And part of the reason Councilmember Fitzgerald is part of the negotiating team is he is absolutely on the numbers. He's an accountant by trade. He is somebody with a very critical eye, somebody I trust a lot to take a look. And then it's not just myself, Councilmember Clark, and Councilmember, like we take it back to the council to talk about this stuff. And we have other people who ask really good questions on the council about all sorts of things. And I believe that these questions are going to be front and center and answered in a manner that is at least, while we might end up in different spots, I think people are really taking this seriously.
Hey, to address your question about the shortfall, the county commission has adequately expressed in the Royals that the team will cover the shortfall, that the taxpayers will not be on the hook for any shortfall, and the county won't be on the hook, the city won't be on the hook. It's 100% the team, and that will be in writing. We've pressed that. I don't know how else to answer that, but we have pressed it to the team that they are on the hook for any shortfall.
And just to stress that, so we receive term sheets that tell us what are the pieces of this deal, not stuff to negotiate the deal. But like I said, this is my second go around. Each go around, the term sheet says the Royals cover any overages. So we don't come back to you and say that, well, the tax wasn't enough, you gotta have some more. No, the Royals say that in writing, they cover any overages.
And as far as community benefits, there is, through the process, much later in the process, a community benefit agreement that gets laid out and talks about what is the benefit of the community. I don't know what that would look like because we didn't get that far first time, neither did Jackson County. But if you look at the zoo, for example, the zoo was done in a bi-county, Clay and Jackson put in, and there's free zoo tickets every couple of months. Like, I don't know what the options are on the table for this, but it's an open negotiation. So there may be benefits to Clay County and North Kansas City that we haven't even conceived of yet. But it's gonna take us getting a little further down that process to have those discussions. Yes.
This kind of does what you're saying, it does, so my next question. So let's say we live in a world where this gets approved and voted for and we're heading down this path. What options does the city or the county have to negotiate with positives or Clay County or the city is talking about? Like, within what the law allows, preference for vendors based in Clay County or workforce development organizations to do job training during construction and then staffing the stadium once games are happening and other things are going on. Workforce immigrants in the school district for things like marketing, construction, trades, farmers organizations. Those sorts of things that can really benefit not only people in the county, but like especially the city too. So if this moves forward, who does that and at what point would that happen?
Yeah, having not made it that far in the process before, I'm gonna lean on, has anybody gotten that far down the road in a process?
So the first time around, we had talks a bit about community benefits, and one of the things that the county commission was very adamant about was that we would offer workforce training and also give a priority to Clay County workers and businesses for all the, to staff and to have contracts for the concessions and stuff like that. But we talked 2 years ago, when we put kind of an outline of a community benefits agreement, and that was definitely covered by the county to the team.
I'll just add from my own experience, so hopefully I don't get a boo when I say it, but my prior elected position was as a councilman in Kansas City. We negotiated the airport community benefits agreement at that time. And before that went out to the public, you knew what the community benefits agreement was, which in that case included MDEWB participation, workforce development, a whole bunch of other stuff. I use that as an example to say, I don't think I'd go too far afield to say, before you would ever see that on a ballot, you would know what those community benefits are. And I would go a little bit further just to say, there are gonna be things that are important to the county, some of which my colleagues already mentioned, and there's gonna be some things that are important to the city. And so let me back up. We're not gonna make the mistake Jackson County did of not knowing what the heck we're getting into before we put it in front of you. Some may think, well, of course you won't. No, we won't. Because we know that when you vote for something, you want to know what's in it for you. What is the value to this community for a tax or whatever, right, to do this project? And I feel pretty strongly, we're not gonna put anything else in front of you until we have that answer. And I feel pretty confident that's gonna be the case for us.
I'll preface this by saying I don't have a decision yet in my head.
Sure.
There's still a lot of information I don't have. The first piece, though, that I always find myself a little confused by is I feel like I'm told a lot, well, we can't really stop this. This is a train that's coming, and we just have. I see Johnson County, I see Olathe, I see Shawnee Mission, I see on the news all the time other cities blocking projects.
Sure.
So unless there's some difference between Missouri and Kansas that I'm not aware of, it is possible to block projects of any kind with a vote. So that's the first thing I would just request. If that's not true here, I would be interested in knowing that because I think it is true.
Yeah, there would need to be city involvement for this to go forward.
Right.
They couldn't just railroad, unless I'm unaware of a way, I don't think it could just get railroaded through without our participation. And I don't think that's the intent either. I think it would take an extreme situation for that to come to pass. I think that the team and the developer and the county and the city, like, we all want to be partners in anything that actually happens. But I don't think there's a mechanism where it could just get pounded through.
Right. And so I always want to push back a little bit when I hear, well, we just can't do it. You know, they're going to do something with it.
Sure.
Well, they're going to do what we allow them to do. And we do have involvement, and we do have decision and choice, and we have elected officials who serve our best interests.
Sure.
And we're counting on that. And I feel confident that you all are going to do that. I do, Jesse.
Appreciate it.
But I have a couple of other things logistic-wise that I don't. We get our water from an aquifer. Can 30,000 toilets flushing over the course of 80 games in the season, is that something our aquifer can even, I mean, there are logistics like that about sewer and just water. We don't get it from the Missouri River, right?
Yeah, well, yes, that's correct. We drink out of an aquifer. We do have a user in town that uses 7 million gallons of water every day.
Okay.
And it hasn't changed the aquifer level. From my discussion with Public Works, it hasn't made a dent. And that's 7 million every day. So I don't know what flushing 30,000 toilets looks like. But I don't.
Increasing climate change?
Of course, yes, of course, yes. But it is a thing that I'm not certain that the aquifer is a limiting factor at this point.
But we have to have logistics, we have to have support sewer, we have to have all those other things.
Oh, absolutely. And we do have, we're finalizing a source water protection program. So above our aquifer, we want to be protective of what gets built over that and what impact it has. And so if I remember correctly from the overlay map I saw, the footprint of the stadium would be in that area. And so they would have to take a lot of measures to make sure that the source water underneath is protected. So that would be another overlay with any development that happens.
And just to Dave's point, and we'll finish up with that. The folks at Platte County are pretty smart. They ended up on the hook for a lot of money for Zona Rosa. And while they won the lawsuit, their bond rating ended up, took a terrible hit as a result.
Yep.
I worked with some of those folks. They're bright and capable people, and they still got screwed.
Yep.
So I hear the assurances But I lived in Platte County at the time, and I know the hurt that happened there, and it wasn't great. It's still not great. They still have a bond reduction that has been impacting that county for now years later.
Yep, and we've seen it in Platte, Zona Rosa, we've seen it in Wyandotte County with the Legends, their bonds are in a struggle. We've seen it downtown with Power and Light. I mean, every
You wanna
jurisdiction,
trust.
yeah, every jurisdiction has a project that on the surface it's shiny, but if you look into the financing, it's difficult, and we don't want that here.
Right.
We want to keep our eye on that, and it's not a guarantee that we're not going to miss something in all of this, but my degree's in finance, we have an accountant on the team, we have a lot of smart people in the room, and we're asking all of you to keep your eyes on this as well and bring that stuff forward. If you're seeing something that doesn't make sense, talk to us.
So, I mean, I've heard some rumors, and so tell me if this is wrong, or maybe it's not wrong. I've heard rumors that if the stadium were to go in and were targeted for, that potentially our fire station's gonna have to move buildings, it's gonna get higher waste of money to need to have to move that for Memorial Stadium. And who's funding all of that? Is that us as North Kansas Cityans? Is that our taxes? When we're talking about having to increase our fire department and our police department and our water infrastructure to have this stadium here, I'm all for development. I just don't really know that I want to grow a stadium as a development. So I guess that's like another question I have is like, if it is, who's really actually paying for all this? Is maybe we have assurances that, oh, the roads are gonna pay for this or that, but I don't see them paying my taxes to fund my police department and my fire department, but I don't know, maybe they will.
Sure. The original rendering with, like, again, Royals 1.0 had it where the part of its footprint was where the fire department sits, Station 1, and that was in discussion to potentially be relocated. It could have been kind of put around it, whether that made sense or not. We didn't get that far. At least I wasn't part of those discussions as a council member. But if it were to need to move, that would be paid for by the team or by the developer or by whatever tax redirection comes out of that. It wouldn't be something that, as a city, would be a taxpayer burden to relocate a fire station or to upsize police service so that the district is adequately protected. All of that has to be wrapped into how the cash flow of the whole thing happens. That's something that as we go, we're looking at it. As we did the first time around, we were looking at what revenues being projected, knocking those down to a rational number, and then how much of that comes back out to the city and what can we do with it. And our sales taxes go into various group of buckets with public safety, transportation, you got general fund. But I remember our public safety budget was going to get pretty big because that portion of the sales tax was going to go into public safety. And so we would have had enough money to upsize our force. Now, can we hire that many? Are we going to be able to woo them away from other jurisdictions? I don't know. It's something we're always trying to do. So quick plug, if you want to be a police officer, the chief's right here. Come talk to him. We're always looking for good men and women to serve on our police force. So, good question. Oh, yep.
You all over the county health, kind of like this,
Sure.
kind of what we think, how does Clay County voters, as a population, 260,000
Yep.
people live in Clay County. Johnson County, Jackson County, that's 75 times, 750.
Yep.
Similar things done in Atlanta, Truist Park.
Yep.
In Top County, in the suburbs of Atlanta, 39 years down there. Top County is the Johnson County of Atlanta, population of 750,000. I go to another vote here, I'd love to go to one. I don't see how Clay County has the population and the tax base. Focus on.
Sure, and it's funny you mentioned it because I grew up a Braves fan. I've looked all through the case studies for the Truist Park and whatnot. It's not just the county. It would be the state participation is pretty crucial here. And again, sort of a black box because of the NDAs that are going on. But that funding source from the state that allows the redirection for a stadium, the Show Me Sports you know, bug push the name, but Show Me Sports still allows for a larger chunk to come from the state. And then the county, yes, we have 1/3 of the population in Jackson, but if there were a half-cent sales tax, that's part of the funding stack. The team would have to bring money. The developer would have to bring money to fill those gaps. Last time when they came to the city, they asked us for $300 million. Our annual budget is 80-ish million, and so that wasn't going to work. But there were talks of how were we gonna redirect funds that were coming from the stadium so that it would self-fund, and we would roll some of that back in. Then we started paring back things like who would own and maintain and fund parking, what would those look like, would it be a surface or deck? And so we got into a lot of that, but ultimately they just chose to go to the crossroads and we saw it out there.
Do you know that the Braves get a stadium?
I don't remember. That's a fair question. Did you, this is fair.
Get this question, but I don't know the Braves part of the question, but hold on a second. I don't know the Braves part of your question, but what I can tell you is it's all about rate and time. So just as it was mentioned with what passed with the state government, 50% of any stadium would be covered by the state. You got 70 in Kansas. So the county's piece of it is based on the rate impacts and the length impacts. So when you throw that into it, then yes, it's definitely possible for the kind of do. And I would just want to say if the team didn't think it is possible, we'd be out of contention. So I'll just answer it that way. Yeah. Cool.
I just want to echo Dave's sentiment, you know. Our county, everybody else might want to stadium down here. How is that going to impact us? I just want to echo that. I agree. I think that's not what we need to talk about. It's not just, you know, Kansas City, everybody else, if it comes to it, right? But we need to protect ourselves from this. And I said it before at council meeting, we have a police officer, second in command, and the level of security and safety we have down here is unprecedented. I travel all over, I'm sure everybody else here does too. I mean, I leave my front door unlocked. Most of the time. Right? If the stadium comes here, we're not gonna be able to do something like that. I'm not gonna be able to leave the back of my truck open at night, park on the street. You know, well, I do, and I was here my whole life, and that's no problem, but the thing is, I'm concerned about the security, I'm concerned about it coming in with the extra people that are coming in.
Sure.
So how is the city going to be able to have the same level of security?
I mean, it's a very fair question. I can put the chief of police on the stand right there. Yeah, no, he's here, but he's involved in these discussions, right? Like if we need to upsize our police force to service the stadium district and to provide a buffer or a security for the neighborhoods, that's something we can do contingent on the funding, right? Like as long as we're getting enough revenue off of that and we can hire the officers, but these are all things that we're gonna talk about. It's not something that's being ignored because crime is a real possibility. As you're bringing more people into any area, crime is naturally a thing that happens to grow with that influx of people. And so it's a point well taken, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yes, so I don't have anybody against this,
Sure.
but, I wanted to talk a little bit about housing. I was something that we sort of, alluded to in this discussion.
Sure.
But data points, I just was throwing to look at spatial force, one city that is, about 55% of, big city residents, residents are possible.
it's a great point, and housing affordability it's a really tough one, very nuanced issue. Given our geographic constriction and our inability, we can't just build housing, because I'm a believer if the more supply side you're gonna have, the cost will get downward pressure, but we just don't have the land to do that. We're kind of dependent on the greater Northland, greater Clay County. So if Scott wants to build a whole bunch of houses, I think we can help with that. But no, it's something to keep an eye on, especially if we want people who are working and living in North Kansas City to be able to also work in North Kansas City. That's something that matters. So I appreciate you putting the spotlight on it.
Yeah, so I've been sitting here trying to think of comparative models. It seems like you've done a lot of research in that, but it also seems like North Kansas City seems pretty unique in terms of we're attached to a large metropolitan area, but we are also very much a small town.
Yep.
And so it's like closer almost comparatively to college sports and how those stadiums affect college towns, but those are mostly football,
Right.
you know, stadiums which don't have nearly as many games per year as a professional baseball team has. And so I'm just curious if you've seen any if, you know, like I'm a mild sports fan, but I just don't know all the case studies around the nation. So are there anywhere close like case studies that you can reference that demonstrate how those places have those stadiums affect the surrounding community?
There's nothing like North Kansas City. I mean, you adequately put, like, we are a very unique spot. The closest case study that comes up is the Braves, because they dropped Truist Park, but they dropped it into a confluence of highways. So it's not like putting it into the middle of the town. The other comparison we get often is Wrigleyville, but like Wrigleyville's existed a very long time. The neighborhood grew up organically. Kim was there this week, I guess. Grew up around the stadium, so it's more organic. Dropping it in is akin to dropping a bomb in a town and then seeing what the fallout looks like. And I would like to know, as much as we can possibly quantify, what will that look like, boots on the ground in North Kansas City, before we try to move forward with anything. And if it's going to be a major negative impact to the way of life in town, we don't move forward. And so we've got to get those questions out to the team, the planners, to the engineers, people who are much smarter than me, who design infrastructure for this very purpose. Can they keep traffic south of Armour? Like, can they do that? And if not, I don't see that this could work. Like, I really don't. So it's going to be a lot of those hard questions, and we'll see what solutions emerge. And if they don't, you know, we're just not going to keep going.
You heard it here first. North Kansas City, 1
There you go, 1 of 1.
Okay, one question is, what I'm hearing is that we got no say in it. We got, I'm kind of on the whole thing.
Sure.
But until the Royals say one thing in the city where I want to go, then you would start up. You tell them, they're not going to tell you, answer all those questions, right? And we're not going to bring us to a vote, right? Yeah. So, you know, it's not, until they point to us and say it's us.
Yep.
And, Kansas City, they didn't handle it very well, and they're very small. Well, people have made very bold, put us quite in opposition. But, you know, until they pick us, you know,
Yep.
I don't see how we can know anything.
It's hard to know, and the reason I hold a meeting like this is because the rumor mill is going to swirl, right? And I want to know what people are feeling, what people are thinking at this point, because again, we're early, but once they make a decision, and again, we don't know when that is, as of today, still maybe late summer, or maybe later. I want to have as much feedback from the community as I can get, whether it's like, we still don't know, but our minds could be changed, or whether it's, I absolutely don't want this here. Starting to have these conversations, give people the opportunity to get their feedback out, I think is really important.
So what you're saying, what the official saying is that we're not going to force you to make a decision until we do have it, correct? Is that the same, cities too, or are they
it's a cart and a horse scenario. Somebody's gonna have to make a decision, and the lease is running at the Kaufman Sports Complex, so there's a decision coming, whether it's them having perfect information, but it's not gonna be us jumping the gun.
If I can make a quick announcement, we're having last call at the bar, no rush guys, take your lunch in life, I just want to let you guys know, and last call.
Thank you. So, yeah, support one another. Oh, hero. Who's got,
And we can all support.
there you go.
I just want to kind of elaborate after you kind of said what others said. I know there's no representatives from the borough here. We're just kind of their state. And anyone here has your ear. But any time they might point that out. I mean, one of the states that made Jackson County was, we talked about the Eastern State, we talked about several other places that were focused on these statistics. Suddenly they have a road on the crossroads. Well, we
Right.
didn't have time. People can get used to an idea over time.
Right.
And if they don't see that, then you really go.
Sure. And I do understand, so their process being what it is, like I kind of alluded to earlier, everyone has a constituency, right? And their business office is in the business of making money and winning baseball games, hopefully. And so they're doing well. But their goal is to find the best deal. Like that is their constituency. And I understand like they also can be a community partner. But their process right now is vetting multiple sites. And until I think they found one that they are most, and they've been around town, they've come and talked with the developer, they've met me for lunch, but they haven't been present. But I know I'm gonna send this video to their business team, I'm gonna publish it out so others can watch it. So they'll see what's being said now.
Well, they need to know that they need to have a strong preference for something.
Sure.
So that people get some of their questions asked and get used to the idea, and therefore they might actually pass a tax bill that they want.
Correct.
And if they don't see that, then.
The Crossroads flip was jarring, like it was. Like, they moved to Crossroads like that.
Yes, and that was the biggest thing, I think that was a lot of the reason my tax failed.
It was one of a number of
People just
mistakes.
didn't have time to get used to that.
Yep.
To vet the businesses and just.
Sure.
They didn't have time.
Yep.
So.
What other questions, thoughts? Yeah.
Okay, so I've lived and worked in North Kansas City for more than 20 years. So I've seen both sides, employees, working, living, now I live here. So my focus is, I would love nothing more than be able to walk through the world baseball game. That would be great. When the start of this, I said, it's never gonna happen. Because I've lived here and worked here for 20 years, reality. One thing that I'm looking for an answer is, at what point do we move past the Royal Stadium issue and get back to where we were? So let's back up. 2 years ago, when we started this, we thought that we were on the brink of having the streetcar come down the slip. Sure. That stopped. We thought we were on the brink of having, had Oxbow starting, we had 23rd Street starting. They still hadn't announced it, and a few other apartment developments. Since then, nothing. What's the last major development that's come across the council's table? For development since the Royals started this whole little mess.
Yeah, it's been a holding pattern. Yep.
And so, in the meantime, we're looking at the West Bottoms, that is looking up the brink, that it's just blowing up.
Yeah.
Developers coming in, wanting to redevelop. Like I said, I've been here 20 years. I just watched all these buildings that used to be in industrial base, they're vacant. They're emptying out. There's nothing going in to replace it. They're not going to because. So, my question is, when do we stop the Royals question and move back to North Kansas City's question of landlocked? There's nothing else to develop on the north end.
Yep.
It's gotta be on the south end. If it's not gonna be industry,
which it's not gonna be. Those people have left. I was one of them. I understand it. Business I work for is still down there. They've been here since 1927. They probably don't want to go anywhere, but I talk to them, I still talk to them. They're like, yeah, we're probably gonna have to. That's the reality of it. When can we get back to filling up these buildings, not with temporary residents or vendors or businesses, but when do we start saying we're gonna take these buildings and not do them one at a time, and we're gonna do a parcel, and we're not only gonna look at redeveloping that, but we're gonna move up.
Yeah.
Because that's what's gotta happen.
Sure. The struggle in that and the tension that I sense is public interest, public desire for things to happen versus private ownership and their decision to move forward. It's gonna take the ownership group deciding that it is no longer an option to have the Royal Stadium here before I think they're gonna explore building. Now, they may have Plan B in their back pocket that we haven't really talked about. They're smart people, right? They are, again, I go back to constituencies and incentives. Their incentive is to be people who own property and make money from that property. And so they're right now in a bit of a holding pattern. They're holding rents where they're at. They're holding buildings that go vacant or staying vacant for longer because who knows what's next. And so it's been a holding pattern. It's been a very frustrating holding pattern for me as somebody on the council because you're right. When is the last time a major development happened? We've been frozen in litigation with One North. We've seen a few apartments go in. I would love to see things start moving again, but it's kind of that log jam right now. Once that decision comes down from the team, and I can't force anything, once that decision comes down from the team, I think you're gonna see something start moving. And I'm hopeful that they stick to that late summer, maybe early summer, maybe tonight, I don't know. They make an announcement. But until then, I think you're gonna see private owners do the thing that maximizes their return. And that can be frustrating from a public perspective, for sure. What other comments and questions and thoughts? Okay.
What's going to state me? Look out the weather.
Starting to pick up?
Yeah.
Okay, I will, thank you all for coming out tonight. I understand the weather's getting a little squirrely out there. Thanks, Mike, for that. Thank you for coming out to be part of this. This is, again, it's very early, but it's important to have these conversations. We'll have more of these as we learn more and if the process continues forward. Be ready for more feedback. Be ready for more discussions. Find your council member, find your county rep, talk to them, get your feedback out there, come to council meetings, be part of this. This is our city, okay? Thank you all very much for coming out. Have a great day.